This was totally all the rage back in medieval times, and in no way a dorky attempt to kind of thematically tie into today's movie. I'm actually genuinely very excited about talking about this particular guilty pleasure of mine, because this has been a guilty pleasure treasure of mine since I was a wee boy. This is actually the movie that kind of introduced me to the concept of time travel. Yeah, even before Back to the Future or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or any superhero sci-fi related project, it was this little film from New Zealand that kind of opened up my eyes to the wonder of time travel and science fiction fantasy. That is 1988's The Navigator, A Medieval Odyssey. Fun little trivia, this movie is actually written and directed by Vincent Ward, who hasn't had as wide of a filmography as some of his contemporaries from New Zealand, such as Peter Jackson. But he has remarkably similar sensibilities when it comes to his storytelling and when it comes to his directorial style. You might best know him as being originally the writer for this, but also the director for this. So needless to say, it's kind of a mixed bag when it comes to Vincent Ward, but I'd say The Navigator is one of his most solid film entries.
What did I do? We called you, and flushed you, and still you didn't wake. Cathedral. People.
The main premise of the story follows this village in 14th century North Cumbria as it's dealing with the rise of the Black Death. It's very cut off, very isolated, and basically a lot of the villagers spend their time mining for copper. And at one point, one of their most adventurous townsfolk, Connor, comes back from the wilds and tells them tales of how the Black Death is overtaking the land, and they witness it firsthand.
What do you say, Connor?
Hi, Connor.
I've seen pilgrims, Martin. I've seen so many bodies there weren't enough living to bury the dead. No, it's pillagers.
No, there's women and children on board.
It's refugees from the east. They're scared of the death.
And eventually come to trust the visions of a local boy named Griffin.
What's wrong, Griffin? The same. The pit. In my dream, we were tunneling through to the farthest part of the earth.
Griffin sees imagery of putting a cross made of copper upon a steeple in cathedral.
There's a church in the far reaches of the earth, Mother. It's the greatest in the world.
And somehow doing that, placing a cross on top of a cathedral at the far end of the earth will somehow save their village from being wiped out by contagion. So in a very tokenish fashion, this fellowship, if you will, is assembled of these miners to drill through the earth to the other side to find that cathedral.
Cathedral.
And what happens next is kind of a glorious little prelude to, like I said, films such as Back to the Future or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Though not with so much of the comedic edge. There is comedy laced throughout the interactions of these Dark Ages folk wandering around contemporary New Zealand society.
Careful, Arnold. There's no pedal.
But the comedic stuff is definitely overshadowed a lot by a lot of dark and gothic and surreal style when it comes to how they view things such as construction sites or bullet trains or a submarine.
An omen. You never bloody tell us!
I didn't see it! How can I see that?
The film overall just carries a surreal tone throughout, but I feel that's the most appealing part about it for me. You'll have scenes taking place in the Cumbrian Mountains where it's completely in black and white, and it feels like something almost out of The Seventh Seal. The black and white aesthetics just sharply contrasts everything and makes you feel kind of that impending doom that is the Black Death. But when it finally comes to the modern day and you burrow through to the other side, even though it's in color, it's so almost alien feeling. Apparently one of the main inspirations for Ward writing this movie to begin with was how he was watching traffic go back and forth on the Autobahn and wondering like, what would that look like to either a very small child or to someone who wasn't raised with the concept of modern innovation and transportation. And that scene is one of the more harrowing parts of the movie as you see Cyril's oafish brother Ulf try to navigate across a highway.
So pretty.
Cyril. Stop right now! Stay right back!
Easy.
So while there definitely can be some levity and some comedy interlaced throughout the interactions that these people have with modern day folk, I feel there is this melancholy and inner sadness that kind of roils along with everything. Also kind of compounded by the imminence of their quest. They need to get this cross up on Cathedral. And there is a lot of great, like, just iconic visual stuff that takes place, like the forging of the cross. Some of the shots in this movie are absolutely gorgeous. And it's actually a really cool, like, sweet story where it comes down to Griffin, this boy, being the main character. And not only do you see everything from kind of the perspective of a time traveler from ancient times, but also from the perspective of a really young, impressionable kid.
You won't go away like that no more, Con, will you?
No, never. Look. The new method for counting your devotions. They make 'em of oak for great lords. This one's made from hawthorn, Griffin. It's a scraggy tree, small and tough. Reminded me of someone.
And also tie that into kind of his blinded hero worship of the character of Connor. And their relationship is actually one of the stronger character dynamics throughout the film, is this idea of how Griffin slowly becomes a little disillusioned with the idea of Connor being the guy with all the answers, when it's pretty clear that he really doesn't have much of a clue as to what to do next.
You promised! You swore you'd never leave!
From me.
And all of that really ties up very well in the reveal at the very end that when I first saw it, I genuinely remember getting really choked up about it. Even though I was a little kid and I was more just enthralled by just the crazy visuals and the weird aesthetic that this movie was going for, I remember the ending to this movie being really heartbreaking for me, and me being kind of really, my soul was a little bit shattered when that last card was laid down and you figured out where all of this was leading to. This has been touted a little bit as kind of a fantasy adventure movie for kids, but I really don't feel it is that. It is dark. It is bleak at times. It is very unflinching with its sometimes brutality, sometimes griminess, or, like I said, the amount of dark territory it's willing to tread.
Who dies at Cathedral?
I don't know.
But it still does have a sense of adventure about it, a sense of this awesome spectacle of these people witnessing this technology for the first time and witnessing this society for the first time. And the performances are really captivating, and you genuinely feel in the plight of these miners, these adventurers, these time travelers to fulfill their objective and get home.
Let's help him out. It's our last night, Smithy.
Give it a bash.
There's no money in this. No one will pay.
Please, Smithy. You must.
Any other night, son, and I wouldn't do it. Hey, hey.
And another great selling point for this movie is the level of great medieval atmosphere that is supported very much, like I said, through the visuals, through the production design, when it is taking place in medieval times, the way they kind of really amplify the modern day experience to seem just otherworldly, and the soundtrack. One of the opening tracks to this film is just someone singing the name of Connor. Go watch it. Go experience it. It won a ton of awards in New Zealand back when it first debuted. I'm surprised it didn't propel Vincent Ward into more marketable, high-concept fantasy projects, aside from the two I mentioned. And I feel here in the year of its 30th anniversary, it deserves a little bit more recognition. It went over well with audiences, but I guess it just never really got as much circulation as a film like this probably deserves. So if you enjoy kind of lower budget but really ambitious science fiction or fantasy type projects like this, I'd say it's a solid watch for you. You'll get a lot out of the story, you'll get a lot out of the characters, and you'll get tons out of the incredible atmosphere that Vincent Ward is able to put into this really small tale of medieval time travel.